Welcome to this explainer. You know, we've all seen them, those incredibly glossy university brochures boasting about their green campus status. They're ticking absolutely every single environmental box. But then you actually visit or you live there and you realize, wait a second, this place is completely unlivable. It's a really startling disconnect. So today, we're going to expose this illusion of the paper-perfect campus. We'll be diving into some fascinating research that proves why the true measure of sustainability isn't found in some compliance document. It's found in the actual, on-the-ground lived experience of the residents. Because think about it, if a campus is technically green but students don't feel safe walking back to their dorms at night, is it really sustainable? Well, let's find out.
Right off the bat, we need to contrast two completely different ways of looking at this. First up, we have what institutions usually obsess over: document-based sustainability. This is the world of rigid checklists, generic green checkboxes, and those big national rankings. And sure, it looks absolutely fantastic in a portfolio, and administrators love to point to it. But then, on the flip side, we have the lived experience. This is the stuff that actually matters day to day. Subjective well-being, physical safety, access to basic resources, and fundamental human needs. The research we're unpacking today makes a massive point. Livability is way more important than those document-based parameters. A campus can look flawless on paper, scoring incredibly high on environmental metrics, but completely fail the daily, practical needs of the people walking its pathways. Livability has to be defined by what people actually experience.
To really wrap our heads around why this shift in thinking is so critical, we have to look at how the source material actually defines these spaces. The researchers point out that higher education institutions are these entirely unique settings. They have a huge variety of users and function as both living and learning areas. Basically, they are self-sufficient ecosystems. And honestly, that is a massive paradigm shift. These aren't just academic buildings where people clock in at 9 and clock out at 5. They are dynamic, breathing, 24/7 microcities. And in any microcity, human well-being has to be the ultimate priority when measuring how sustainable it is. Because a city that ignores the needs of its citizens is a failing city, no matter how many trees it manages to plant.
So what exactly do we mean when we talk about this? Campus livability is the overall standard of living experienced by students, staff, and faculty. It goes way beyond just the physical infrastructure of the buildings to include things like subjective well-being, safety, access to essential services, and environmental peace. Really, livability is the missing link here. It takes those physical bricks and mortar and connects them directly to the big United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Specifically, we're talking about Goal 3 for good health and well-being, Goal 4 for quality education, and Goal 11 for building truly sustainable cities and communities. Those goals aren't just abstract, lofty global targets. They literally start right at our front doors.
To actually measure this complex lived reality, the researchers didn't just guess. They established a highly rigorous, data-driven framework that identifies 7 core dimensions of campus life. We're looking at things like residential quality, sociocultural vibrancy, down to daily safety, accessibility, and basic amenities. Now, these aren't just academic buzzwords thrown around in a faculty meeting. These are the 7 crucial levers that dictate the daily reality for residents. If support services fail, the student struggles. If mobility is restricted, the whole ecosystem kind of breaks down. These dimensions prove, for sure, that true sustainability isn't just about calculating carbon footprints. It's a holistic, human experience that needs serious attention across every single facet of daily life.
Now, when you map these 7 dimensions directly against those UN SDGs we just mentioned, the mechanics of livability become incredibly clear. You can actually see the direct mechanisms at play. For example, improving leisure spaces, adding public seating, or just fixing broken sidewalks, these aren't just minor maintenance tasks that you can bump down the budget for next year. They act as intentional pathways. When an administrator fixes a sidewalk or improves campus lighting, they are actively driving global outcomes for health, well-being, and sustainable communities right there on the ground. The big macro goals are achieved entirely through those micro, everyday lived experiences.
Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but does it actually work in the real world? Let's take a look at what we can call the Indian campus experiment. The researchers took this entire framework out of the lab and rigorously tested it across 3 premier technical institutes in South India. And they didn't just do a desk study looking at spreadsheets. They entirely bypassed the institutional portfolios and went straight to the source, gathering extensive on-the-ground survey data directly from the students, the faculty, and the staff. They wanted to know exactly how these environments were impacting the people living in them every single day. And the 3 micro-cities they chose, NIT Calicut, Anna University, and IIT Madras, are incredibly distinct from one another. They offer this amazing contextual variety. For instance, NIT Calicut sits in a semi-urban, hilly environment, totally spread out across the landscape.
Anna University, on the other hand, is completely packed into a super dense megacity context. And then you have IIT Madras, which directly borders a sprawling national park. Testing this framework across such highly varied, dense residential populations is absolutely crucial. It ensures that the findings aren't just theoretical fluff. They are robust, context-specific, and adaptable to real, on-the-ground realities pretty much anywhere in the world.
Which brings us to a massive reality check. We have to ask a really difficult question. Are campuses actually delivering on what users value? Are the billion-dollar infrastructure investments and those high-level sustainability initiatives actually aligning with the urgent, unmet needs of the students and staff? Because, it's pretty easy to build a LEED-certified building, but it's a whole lot harder to build a space that feels genuinely safe and supportive for a student walking home at 2 in the morning. To find out if institutions were missing the mark, the researchers needed a reliable way to measure the gap between what the institution expected and the actual human reality. Enter the Importance Satisfaction Analysis, or ISA for short. Think of this as the master key for this kind of data analysis. It's an incredibly powerful investigative tool. Basically, here is how it works. It asks users to rate how important a specific campus feature is to them, and then, crucially, rate how satisfied they actually are with it. By plotting these two simple metrics against each other, the ISA exposes the exact gap between what an institution promises in its glossy brochures and what its community actually experiences in their day-to-day lives. It strips away all the marketing spin and just leaves the hard, undeniable truth. When you plot this data out, it visually forces administrators to face some pretty brutal facts. The ISA categorizes every single campus service into 4 stark quadrants. In one zone, you have Keep Up the Good Work, where importance is high and satisfaction is high. Awesome, everyone is happy there. But then you have the Critical Concentrate Here zone. This is where importance to the residents is incredibly high, but satisfaction is glaringly low. You also have a Low Priority zone, and finally, this fascinating possible Overkill quadrant, where satisfaction is super high, but the community doesn't actually care that much about it in the first place. Translating this combined data exposes a shocking reality check. In that Urgent Concentrate Here zone, essential human needs are flat out failing. We're talking about things like CCTV, harassment prevention, and special needs facilities, along with emergency tech connectivity, all being severely neglected. But meanwhile, resources are potentially being dumped into that possible overkill quadrant, focusing on things like residential quietness and neighborliness. Just think about the absurdity of that for a second. A campus prioritizing quiet dorms over protecting its students from harassment. It's a clear, mathematical mismatch between what people actually need to survive and thrive and what is currently being provided. And it's fascinating to see how this plays out across different environments, because it's definitely not one size fits all. When researchers compared the specific data from NIT Calicut and Anna University, they saw completely unique struggles based entirely on their geography and administration. Anna University, for instance, suffers massive dissatisfaction regarding CCTV and safe, inclusive spaces, despite residents rating them as highly important. NIT Calicut has its own completely distinct clustering of unmet needs. This localized, hyper-specific data is exactly what administrators need to make targeted, meaningful interventions, instead of just throwing money at generic green initiatives that don't solve the local problems at all.
Stepping back, the divide here is crystal clear. On one hand, you have the traditional administrator's view. They are chasing broad metrics and shiny awards perfectly tailored for national rankings. They want that perfect sustainability document. But then, the lived reality is practically crying out for basic human decency and urgent needs. Better lighting, proactive safety measures against harassment, and accessible sidewalks for everyone. True livability means prioritizing the ground-level reality that dictates if a student or staff member can actually thrive, rather than just surviving day-to-day to prop up a campus's green score.
So how do institutions actually fix this massive disconnect? Well, the researchers outlined 4 highly practical steps for building thriving ecosystems. Step 1. Survey your community's importance versus satisfaction. You have to go directly to the people. Step 2. Plot that data on the ISO grid to make it visual and absolutely undeniable. Step 3. Fix the concentrate here gaps immediately. Those are your urgent human needs requiring short-term, low-cost actions. And finally, Step 4. Reevaluate every 6 months to ensure continuous improvement. Administrators can use this exact roadmap right now to stop ticking arbitrary boxes and start building highly responsive, actionable ecosystems.
I'll leave you to ponder this final thought as we wrap up this explainer. Ask yourself, is your campus built for a ranking, or is it genuinely built for its residents? It's a profound shift in perspective, moving away from a piece of paper and toward true, lived experience livability.
When institutions prioritize the real human experience over checklists, they don't just build greener campuses, they build thriving, inclusive communities where people actually want to live. Thank you so much for joining me, and I really hope this framework sparks an entirely new way of viewing the spaces where we live, learn, and grow.